Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So by the title of today's video, you can tell that this is going to be my September wrap up, and I actually read a little bit more than I usually do for the month, so I'm really happy about that. Before I fell off track, I actually used to average about 6 or 7 books a month, and I know that might not seem like a lot to some of y'all, but as someone who works a 9 to 5 and watches a lot of reality TV and tries to catch up, that's actually quite a bit. So in past couple of months, I've actually only been reading maybe about 4 or 5 books, so the fact that I'm slowly starting to get back to where I was makes me really proud of myself. So once again, everybody clap. Thank you, thank you. But because I have 6 books that I need to talk about and get through, I am going to try to make this video go a little bit quicker. I'm going to try my hardest to really condense my thoughts and everything like that. And if you really want to know more in depth, then definitely head over to my Bookstagram and check out my reviews. Not all of them are up, but they will be up in the next coming days. But yeah, with all of that out of the way, let's get started. So as always, I'm going to start with my lowest rated book and then work my way up to the highest rated book of the month. And the lowest rated book that I have here, which is sitting at a 3.5 star, is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Now, some of y'all might be looking at me like I'm a little bit crazy for rating this book as low as I did, but hear me out because it wasn't all bad. I enjoyed it, but I have a few qualms. This story actually follows a family known as the Darker family. The Darker family isn't your typical family. They're very catty, very mean, and very gossipy towards one another and about each other. But they do get together and meet up as a family once a year to celebrate their grandmother's birthday on Halloween night. And so their grandmother actually lives in this gothic mansion on this tiny tidal island. That's how it's described in the synopsis. And because their grandmother lives on this island, it's really hard to get in and get out of this mansion because you have to worry about high tide and low tide and all of that type of stuff. The family decides to return for another year to celebrate their Nana's birthday, and once they get there and as the night progresses, secrets come out, truths get exposed, and the body count is rising because somebody is picking off the Darker family one by one. Like I mentioned, I rated this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I was really going back and forth on this rating, you guys, because I really did enjoy the story and it kept me entertained throughout, but I just couldn't physically give it higher than a 3.5 just because of the reasons that I'm going to go into later. But I wanted to start with the things that I did like, and one of the things that I really enjoyed is the writing style. I have said this before because I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney last year, that I am in love with her writing style. She's truly phenomenal when it comes to creating and capturing a creepy atmosphere. I was genuinely creeped out by how things were playing out in this mansion, and also my anxiety was just building with every chapter because knowing that the family could not get off of this island or that no one could come to their rescue was just so tense and nail-biting, and it honestly just made me spiral because I could not imagine being in a situation like this. So I just really love the fact that Alice Feeney was really able to play into that creepiness and turn it up a few notches. Okay, there are so many creepy moments throughout this book, even quotes that I still think back on where I'm like, ooh, that gives me the chills, you know. So I just really love her writing style. That has not changed, and I just think that she's always going to be one of those authors, especially thriller authors, that I look for when it comes to creepy and ominous atmospheric writing. Alice Feeney is always going to give it to you, I feel like, when it comes to that. Another thing that I really enjoyed was that this book genuinely kept me entertained all throughout. I was just so fascinated by the Darker family and what secrets lied beneath and what was really going on within their family dynamic. The wheels in my head were spinning a lot when I was reading this book because I was really trying to figure out who was the real villain and why are they all here, why are they getting picked off one by one, what's really going on. I was just left guessing and kept on my toes throughout the entire story. I really love that aspect of the story too, and it really reiterates the fact that I really like locked room mysteries as well as just one by one mysteries too. They're just so entertaining. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the fact that this took place on Halloween. I feel like I don't really find or have that many books that do take place on the actual night of All Hallows Eve, but this did, and it didn't disappoint. Like I said, Alice Feeney really played into the creepy atmosphere and the ominous atmosphere, so I just really enjoyed it, and I just think that this book really is perfect to read during this time of year if you are going to read it. And then the final thing that I will say that I enjoyed were some of the twists in the story. I'm not going to go into full detail, of course, but just know 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi is one of the most chilling things that I have ever read when it came to this book. I will not say anything further. If you read this, then you know you know. Alice Feeney truly is the queen of twist, and I will just leave it at that. Now moving on to the reasons why I rated this a 3.5 star and why this isn't my favorite Alice Feeney novel, and it's mostly because of the ending and the big reveal. Now y'all know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I love a campy book. I love when books are outlandish and absurd. I love the theatrics, but I just felt like the reveal for this was too goofy. It was too goofy and it was too unserious for me. I just felt like the build up and the anticipation to finding out who is really picking off the darker family and why was just very underwhelming in my opinion. Just felt like we could have did a little bit better than that. But yeah, that's my main gripe with this book, is that I just felt like the reveal and the ending was just too goofy and too unserious. But I still recommend giving this book a read and forming your own opinion, because this book has been getting a lot of high reviews, especially on Bookstagram. So many of my Bookstagram friends loved this book, and I understand why they loved it. I just personally did not care for the ending and the reveal, like I said, but that's just a me thing. But yeah, definitely still recommend picking up this book and giving it a try. I still like Alice Feeney's writing style a lot, so I definitely will be picking up more of her books very soon, because I would like to read her backlist as well. Similar to Lisa Jewell, I would like to go back into Alice Feeney's catalog and really read as much as I can, because I just really like this woman's style, and like I said, she's really good at twist usually. So yeah, but those are all of my thoughts on Daisy Darker. Now moving on to my 4 stars of the month. I actually only have, I think, 2 books in this category, so we're gonna try to get through these as quick as possible. But the first book that I wanted to talk about here is Teeth: The Story of Beauty, Inequality, and the Struggle for Oral Health in America by Mary Otto. Before we get into my in-depth thoughts about this one, I just want to preface and say that I feel like they're going to be all over the place, because it was really hard to nail down how I truly felt about this book and everything that I learned, what I took away. So please bear with me as I get through this section, but I'm going to try to make this as cohesive as possible. So I was actually reading this book physically, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it was kind of a chore to get through it physically. So I decided to switch to the audiobook on Audible, and I enjoyed that experience so much better, and it was just a lot less tedious to get through. So if you are going to pick up this book, then I definitely recommend going the audiobook route, because the narrator is great, and it's just also, like I said, easier to get through because the text in here is a bit dense. So just keep that in mind. But this is a nonfiction book. It pretty much just speaks to what it says here in the little subtitle, that it really is about the story of beauty, inequality, and the struggle for oral health in America. So you really get a deep dive into the US dentistry industry. We also just really get a deep dive into why our medical care and our dental care are completely separate from one another, and why it might be impossible to actually bridge the gap and merge the two. There's also talks in here about why so many people strive to have perfect straight white teeth, and why people with perfect straight white teeth are essentially more accepted and more palatable in society than people that have inadequate oral and dental care. So this book just really, like I said, goes into all of that type of detail, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty of teeth and its role in our society and our world, essentially. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I did enjoy this for what it was. Definitely thought that this was going to be something completely different, because I actually heard about this book when I was watching one of Tiffany Ferg's videos about, I think, the rise of veneers and why so many people strive to have that Hollywood smile. So I will link Tiffany's video down below just in case you want to check it out, because she actually goes into the veneers phenomenon and craze, and really gets into the nitty-gritty of the psychology and why so many of us want veneers or something that's like veneers, etc. And that's what I thought that this book was going to go deeper into. But like I said, when I was explaining the loose synopsis, this book really does just more so talk about the dental care system and the beginnings and the origin story of the US dentistry industry. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it, because I actually really love history. I love learning new things, and especially just going back in time and learning about how things got started and why things are the way that they are in this country in particular. And so it was really fascinating to go back in time and learn about how dentistry even became a thing and how it's evolved over time. But like I mentioned earlier, this book was kind of a chore to get through, just because the text was so dense, and it was kind of difficult to wrap my head around when it came to the medical jargon. But that's why I said switch to the audiobook, because it just does a better job at breaking all of that stuff down and making it more digestible for you to retain, if you know what I mean. But yeah, going back to my point, I did enjoy this. I learned a lot, and it also just reaffirmed a lot of the things I already believed when it comes to our health care and our dental care, specifically in the US. I'm only talking about the US, and this book really only focuses on the US, so just keep that in mind for any of my overseas girlies. I'm really only talking about the US here. But yeah, I did learn a lot, and it's just really unfortunate that once again capitalism and greed prevail, and is more than likely always going to prevent the merging of medical care and dental care, even though it makes the most sense to have both of these things combined, because dental care is healthcare. You cannot function properly if your teeth and your mouth is rotting, okay, or you're in pain in general. It's just, you're not going to be able to function. I'm sure all of y'all watching this right now have experienced tooth pain to some extent, okay? I experience it all the time, trust me, with my Invisalign, so I understand, of course. It's just really frustrating to know that even though tooth pain is its own kind of pain, and it's a pain that you don't want to go through, we still don't have proper benefits and proper care for this, you know? It was just really infuriating to read about some of the people in here that Mary Otto spoke to that have not had proper dental care their entire lives. She talked to so many people in so many different impoverished areas. They were just willing to talk to her about their experiences growing up and not being able to afford to go to the dentist, or when they did go to the dentist, they had a really bad experience. And it was just heartbreaking to read about because, like I said, tooth pain is no joke and nobody should be suffering like that. And this book also took it a step further and really packed a punch because it actually talked about a few people that have died as a result of not receiving adequate dental care, and more specifically there was a mention of a child in here named DeMonte Driver, and it was so heartbreaking to read about his story and to know that that little boy could have been saved if this country gave a shit, you know? Like, it's just so infuriating and so heartbreaking and devastating. So I really do like the fact that this book was able to connect with me in that regard and truly made me feel something and evoke those type of emotions out of me. That's what I want when I read nonfiction. I want to be able to say that I learned something and that it also truly did affect me, whether that's good or bad. I just wanted to at least affect me, and this book has affected me. Now, the subject matter, of course, is devastating, like I said, but I still appreciated the journey that I went on with this book. I do really like the fact that Mary Otto tried to provide some type of solutions to, you know, making sure that everybody has proper dental care. And of course, in a utopia, it would work. Everybody would be able to have proper dental care, but because we don't live in a utopia and because this world is set up the way that it is, it's just never going to be a thing. And like I already mentioned earlier, capitalism and greed, it's always going to win out. So yeah, all in all, really enjoyed this one. Even though I did feel a bit hopeless after reading this, I still like the fact that I at least have this knowledge now, and that I'm definitely going to be looking at my benefits and just dental care and just all of that with a more critical eye. So yeah, I would recommend this book if you're more so interested in the academic side of this and not really like the psychology. If you're interested in learning more about the origin story of the US dentistry industry, as well as learning more about US policy and really getting into the minute details of our dental care and healthcare system, then I will say that this is the book for you. But if you really want something that goes deeper into the psychology behind all of this, so more so why do people strive to have a Hollywood smile? Why do people strive to get veneers? Why are so many people getting veneers, etc.? Then I would definitely recommend checking out Tiffany's video or finding maybe some other books that really like speak to that topic. But yeah, all in all, did enjoy this one, and I would recommend it, like I said, if you're interested in what I stated previously. And now moving on to my last 4-star of the month, and it is Vanessa Jared's Got a Man by Laquette. So I actually featured this book, I think, in my September TBR video because I was sent this book as an ARC by St. Martin's Press. So thank you so much, St. Martin's Press, for sending this my way. But I did read this in September and made sure I posted my review before the pub date. This story follows a 40-something-year-old divorcee named Vanessa Jared. Vanessa was in her marriage for, I want to say, about like 20 years or 20 plus years. And so she really had, of course, a lot of stock in that marriage. And she was left devastated by the whole ordeal. And so to try to pick up the pieces and move on with her life, she did join this like divorce support group, and there she meets her two best friends who appear in the story named Cree and Janae. And Cree and Janae are actually from this very small town, and Vanessa is from a big city, but they still decide to keep in touch and, you know, form a friendship and cultivate that friendship over the course of a few years. But Vanessa, of course, returns back to her life trying to pick up the pieces. While she's doing that, she actually gets a knock on the door from this man named Michael, and Michael is actually the sheriff of this small town that Cree and Janae both live in. And the reason why he shows up on Vanessa's doorstep is actually very funny, and in typical rom-com absurdity, he actually tells Vanessa that he needs her help to try to prevent his sister from marrying Vanessa's ex-husband, because Vanessa's ex-husband is a scammer, and Vanessa's not really with the plan. She doesn't really want to get involved because she just wants to move on from her ex-husband, but Michael does his best to convince Vanessa, and she's convinced. So she decides to help Michael and essentially break up this engagement before it goes any further. And while Vanessa and Michael are scheming to do this, sparks start to fly and the story takes off from there. I just thought that this was a very charming, cute, and steamy rom-com. I couldn't have asked for anything more, to be honest. I have never read anything by Laquette before. I actually think this might be her debut. I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that, but I've never read anything by Laquette before, but I definitely will be picking up more books by her, hopefully in the future, because I really enjoyed this one. Starting with Vanessa's character, I just really liked her, and I liked reading more about her. I said this actually in my review, but I like that this story followed around 40-year-old somethings, because it just made the story more interesting, and of course, it just gave me a different perspective into what life might be like as a 40-year-old something. I just really liked that, and I just really liked how like mature the book was. I also just really loved the female friendship relationship between Vanessa and Cree and Janae. You could tell that they were girls, okay? Like, cue the Girlfriends theme song, because that's truly what Vanessa, Cree, and Janae were. Their banter was so funny and so witty, and whenever they did link up and start to cut up, essentially, I just felt like I was there with them and just having a fun time with my girls. So I just really loved that part of the story. It felt very authentic and very real, and that's just one thing that I noticed about Black authors in particular. They do such a great job at truly capturing the essence and the vibe, I guess, if you will, when it comes to Black friendships and relationships and community. I just really love the fact that Black authors like do it so well, and it just feels so authentic and so relatable. Going back to Vanessa's character more specifically, my girl was going through a lot in this story, okay? She was going through so much, and I empathized with her heavy, okay? Because like I said earlier, her ex-husband Carl was a scammer, honey. He was a scammer. I just couldn't wait for him to get his and wait for Vanessa to get her revenge on this guy, because he just did her dirty and dogged her out for 20+ years. And it's a shame, because you know that this happens in real life, where people waste real years and real time on someone and with someone, and they just weren't who they said they were this entire time, you know? So I just felt really bad for her in that regard, and you could tell that she was struggling every single day to really pick up the pieces and move forward with her life and not think about her old life with Carl. Because of that, it was just real, it was raw, and even though this was a rom-com and there were a lot of light and fluffy and cute moments, there were also a lot of serious moments and a lot of heavy hitting topics. So I will just preface and say that you should look up trigger warnings, because there are themes of emotional abuse and verbal abuse. So just keep that in mind. But this story had a lot of substance to it, in my opinion, in particular Vanessa and Michael's character. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about Vanessa. Loved her, wished her nothing but the best, and I couldn't wait for her to get her happy ending in all of this. And then moving on to Michael really quickly, I actually really enjoyed Michael's character. I don't know what the general consensus is on this book and like on the characters specifically. I did not look up Goodreads reviews, so y'all are gonna have to let me know. But I haven't looked up any reviews on Goodreads. But I actually enjoyed Michael's character, but I could see why people wouldn't enjoy his character, because he was very like overprotective, and to the point where it could be considered as like smothering a little bit. But once you learn everything that Michael has been through in his life, it makes sense as to why he is so protective and why he's always like hovering over the people that he cares about, in particular his younger sister. But I also do think that Michael should have definitely like sought out therapy, because he had a lot of unresolved trauma and guilt that he needed to work through, and it was just very evident throughout his storyline. But all in all, I really enjoyed his character. I thought he was a great book boyfriend, and I thought that he was great for Vanessa. I did buy into the romance. I will say that it is insta-lovey, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. It was just a little bit too quick for me and a little bit too fast. And so I would have liked it if we could have had a little bit more build up, a little bit more anticipation and yearning and desire. But I understand that sometimes it's just not going to go that way in certain romance books, and it didn't go that way here. I'm not offended by it or really mad at it. It was just something that I just personally wish we could have just had a little bit more build up to. I'm starting to notice that I'm getting more interested in like slow burn romances, so I do plan on reading some Mariana Zapata soon, but I'm starting to notice that I actually do like slow burn romances more than I thought. And I have to thank The Roughest Draft, because that book is what really solidified the fact that, oh, okay, maybe I don't hate slow burn romances as much as I thought I did. So yeah, that still didn't stop me from enjoying this story, as well as buying into Vanessa and Michael's relationship. The steam was great. And I also love the fact that this book is diverse. As you can tell by the cover, Vanessa is Black and Michael is Asian, and I just really like the fact that there's like this different type of representation when it comes to romance books. It's really refreshing to see this. You don't read about it often. So when I did see this making its rounds on Bookstagram before St. Martin's Press sent this to me, I knew I was going to have to pick this up, because it just looked so good, and it definitely was. It did not disappoint. Definitely recommend picking up this book if you're interested, and if you want a rom-com but you also want something that has a little bit more oomph to it. And now moving on to my 4.5 star of the month. I'm actually not going to go into full detail about this book, because I already have a reading vlog on it. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So like I said, I'm not going to go into really any detail about this book, because I have an entire reading vlog where I read this book as well as The Hacienda by Isabel Canillas, where I was comparing the two books and contrasting them. So if you want to know my full thoughts on this book as well as the synopsis, then definitely make sure you check out that vlog. I will link it up in the cards here somewhere. But I just wanted to call this out quickly before I move on to my 5 stars of the month. Now we are moving on to the 5 stars of the month, and I actually have 3 books here, one of which I'm not going to go into too much detail about, because similar to Mexican Gothic, because I already talked about it in a reading vlog, and it was the same reading vlog, but I'm going to quickly get it out of the way. The Hacienda by Isabel Canillas. And I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry for mispronouncing Hacienda in my reading vlog. I took Spanish for 2 years.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it.
Because I completely forgot that the H in Hacienda is silent. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Clearly I'm rusty and I need to brush up on my Spanish, which I plan on doing in the new year. I would like to become fluent because I just love the language, and I do want to visit Spain one day. That's actually like my dream destination. I want to know how to speak Spanish so that way I can communicate easily there. But anyways, yes, 5 out of 5 stars. Love this story. Make sure you check out that reading blog if you're interested in learning more about my thoughts. Now moving on to my next 5-star of the month. This is a thriller, and it is Dark Roads by Chevy Stevens. I've actually had this book on my TBR for about a year now. I still remember when I bought this book from Barnes & Noble because I showed it in one of my old book hauls, and I was so excited when I got this book because so many people were talking about it and raving about it at the time, but I just never picked it up for whatever reason. But also I'm a mood reader, and I really have to be in the mood to read certain things, and I just wasn't in the mood until I could not decide what I wanted to read one day. And so I just asked Marcus, my boyfriend, if he could take a look at my bookshelves and pick out a book that he would want me to read. And so he picked out Dark Roads, and I have to say that I am impressed, and I love that he picked this book because this was a 5 out of 5 star read. It was phenomenal. So I'm actually just going to read the synopsis because there is so much going on with the plot that I probably will spoil something. So right here it says, the Coal Creek Highway stretches for 500 miles through rugged wilderness. For decades, young women traveling the road have gone missing. Motorists and hitchhikers, those passing through or living in one of the small towns scattered along the region, have fallen prey time and again. And no killer or abductor who has stalked the highway has ever been brought to justice. Haley McBride calls Coal Creek home. Her father taught her to respect nature, how to live and survive off the land, and to never travel the highway alone. Now he's gone, leaving her a teenage orphan in the care of her aunt, whose police officer husband uses his badge as a means to bully and control Haley. Overwhelmed by grief and forbidden to work, socialize, or date, Haley vanishes into the mountainous terrain, hoping everyone will believe she's left town. Rumors spread that she was taken by the highway killer, who's claimed another victim over the summer. 1 year later, Beth Chevalier arrives in Coal Creek, where her sister lived and where she was murdered. Estranged from her parents and seeking closure, Beth takes a waitressing job at the local diner, just as her sister did, desperate to understand what happened to her and why. But Beth's search for answers puts a target on her back and threatens to reveal the truth behind Haley's disappearance. So I'm not going to get into the full details of the full synopsis of this story. I really more so just want to talk about the central message, because to me, that's what really hit home, and I feel like that's what Chevy Stevens was really trying to do, was getting her point across, and she got it across for me especially. Even though this book is fiction, it was inspired by the Highway of Tears that is actually located in Canada, I'm pretty sure, and it's basically a long stretch of highway where investigators believe many young women and girls who possibly disappeared in the 70s and 80s, and just even in general, are buried along that highway. And remains have been found over the years. Remains have been found and have been returned to, you know, their respective families, but there are still a lot of missing young women and girls, as you guys know, I'm sure. And some investigators, as well as just people in the true crime community, do believe that there are so many more victims that are buried along that stretch of highway, specifically young Indigenous women and girls, which is just so heartbreaking and gut-wrenching, because you know that there's essentially nothing that investigators can do in order to bring justice to all of those victims that might be along the highway. Because it is so long and so vast, it's physically impossible really for search parties to explore every nook and cranny to bring these girls home. And it's just, every time I think about it, I get choked up and I just get so emotional, because it's just such a reality and it's just so real, and it could hit close to home. You guys know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I do read a lot of books that focus on feminism and just like really understanding why this world is set up the way that it is for young women and girls, and why the patriarchy is the way that it is, etc. So I'm not surprised that I enjoyed this book and I enjoy the overall themes and messaging, but man, was this book triggering and emotional and just difficult to read at times. This was a brutal story, and I will just preface and say that it is a very brutal story, but I think Chevy Stevens does a phenomenal job at still remaining sensitive and respecting the victims' memories of the Highway of Tears, but also just not the Highway of Tears, just in general. Heartbreaking to think about the fact that that is just a reality, and it's just always going to be a reality. It makes me feel hopeless. It makes me feel like there's nothing that we can do. And it just makes me feel like the only thing that you can do is just try your hardest to stay safe and to stay vigilant. So yeah, all in all, even though the story was brutal and it was triggering and it was just so emotionally charged, especially the ending, God, the ending was so emotionally charged that I actually teared up quite a bit. It definitely gave me like a Lovely Bones type of feel, which like is another movie that also has these similar messages and themes. So yes, definitely recommend picking up this book if you're interested in social commentary, but especially social commentary about feminism, misogyny, femicide, anything along those lines. This book has all of that wrapped up into it. So definitely recommend picking up this book, but I will be picking up more by Chevy Stevens in the future. I know she has some other books out that I'm really eager to read, because this one was just so great. I'm not sure which one I'm going to start with next. I just want to quickly say that Chevy Stevens also included a letter from the author here where she talks about the process for writing this book and how this book was fiction, but how the Highway of Tears inspired her to write this. And she also calls out the disparities when it comes to missing Indigenous women. I just really appreciated that because it's something that still needs to have a spotlight on it, and it's something that we as a society need to continue to talk about because it is a real problem and it's an epidemic. That's exactly what it is. It's an epidemic. So I'm just really happy that she used her platform in that way to bring light to a topic that still isn't as mainstream as it should be. All right, y'all, and now we're moving on to my last 5-star of the month, and I'm going to try to make this quick because now my upstairs neighbors decided to wake up and I hear them stomping around. So we're gonna try to get through this quickly. But the last 5-star book that I have for the month is Booktuber's by Emily Henry. Yes, I know, shocker. Can you guys believe it that this book has made it into my 5-star pile? I am so shocked, but I'm so happy about it because this book has received so many mixed reviews, and a lot of the reviews that I have seen are negative, which broke my heart because I was like, damn, please don't tell me that Emily Henry is going to be a one-hit wonder author for me, because you guys know I love beach read. That's one of my favorite romances of all time, but I hated People We Meet on Vacation.
Genuinely do not understand how people love that book
and did not find that book boring and just uninteresting, but you know, that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. I was really worried that I was not going to like another one of her books because a lot of people did not care for this one, but I am happy to say that I did. So this story actually follows 2 characters, one named Nora and one named Charlie. Starting with Nora. Nora is actually a cutthroat, no-nonsense literary agent, and she's one of the best in the industry. But while Nora has a lot of success in her career, she doesn't have the best luck when it comes to romance. She kind of describes herself as the woman that's never chosen as the one. She feels like she's always just like that filler for guys until they find the one, essentially. So she's just never really had a lot of luck in the romance department. On the flip side of that, you have Charlie, who is an editor, and Charlie is very brooding and just like very like to himself and very standoffish. So a lot of people in the industry don't really care for him that much, but they understand that he is a great editor, so they still decide to work with him. But he's no nonsense, just like Nora. Anyways, Charlie and Nora actually meet one day during a like business lunch, and they get off on the wrong foot, and they actually don't see each other or speak to each other for like a while after that, until they somehow both end up in the same small town over the course of a few months. And while they are in this small town, sparks start to fly and the story takes off from there. So like I said, I rated this a 5 out of 5 stars because this book was just so good. It was classic Emily Henry, and I loved every single second of it. Her writing is just unmatched. I've said this before, but I am a platinum status member of Emily Henry Hive, okay? Truly, I love this woman's writing style and the way that she just tells her stories and has her characters tell their stories. Her banter is just so witty, so funny, and so clever. I found myself laughing out loud to so many of the jokes that the characters said. Specifically Nora. I love Nora. I thought Nora was a hoot. Honestly, she was a hoot. I just love Emily Henry's humor, and she just gets it. She knows what the people wants, and she knows how to keep the people entertained, all right? And then expanding on my point a little bit more when it goes back to the writing, I had to stop myself from annotating the shit out of this book because there were so many different quotes and so many different pieces of dialogue that I fell in love with that I just wanted to highlight and sticky note, but I couldn't because I was actually buddy reading this with Erin from Erin Megan here on Booktube, and I was trying to get through this book because Erin reads fast. If y'all don't know, Erin reads really fast, okay? So I was trying to keep up with my girl, and I didn't. She actually finished the book before me, but I was trying really hard to just like get through it. But I definitely think that I'm going to go back and reread this at some point because there are so many different quotes in here that I just loved and that I would love to return back to. So I just had to briefly call that out because Emily Henry's writing is unmatched, like I already said earlier. And another thing that I wanted to say was that I really appreciate the fact that this book and Emily Henry played into romance tropes and just sometimes how cliche and funny and sweet romance tropes can be. It was really like tongue-in-cheek, you know? It was really tongue-in-cheek writing when it came to playing into those tropes, and I just really enjoyed that. I've said this before, but she's very clever and she knows what she's doing, and I appreciate that. I appreciate when authors can be a little cheeky. One of the real reasons why I think I love this book so much was because it was very, very reminiscent of beach read. There were so many similarities and so many parallels between the two that I just loved it. And there was also a few odes and references to beach read in here, so definitely think that Booklovers and beach read are honestly like cousins or something like that. So shout out to Emily Henry for that, because beach read stands, we were fed reading this book. Another reason why I really love love this story was because this book truly felt like a love letter to New York City. And I'm not from New York, I'm from Philly, but I did live in New York for about like 3 months one summer when I was interning, and I loved it. I love the city, I love the hustle and bustle. I just love the rawness and the grittiness of it. And I've just always been captivated by New York since that experience, and I'm always itching to go back. I'm always wanting to visit and just explore even more because there's just so much that you can do in New York. You truly never feel like you're bored because there's always something that you could be doing. Even if you're just walking around, you could just stumble upon something and then spend your whole day doing it. And that's what I did when I was living there for the summer. I would just walk around and just find different stores and different shops to go to, and it was just a great time, you know, and just also just walk around and like sit in the parks and all of that. So I love New York City, and I love when books and movies take place in New York because it just feels magical and whimsical, and you know, I don't know how to explain it. Like, if you love New York the way that I feel like Nora did, or just like how a lot of people do, then you'll understand like what I'm talking about. But I just really love the fact that Emily Henry like leaned into that and leaned into that feeling of just loving a city sometimes that honestly doesn't love you back, but you still love it nonetheless. There's just something about it. Another reason why I enjoyed this book, which I feel like is really obvious, is the fact that it is an ode to book lovers. So if you love books, if you love reading, if you are an avid bookworm, then this story is really going to resonate with you in that regard at the very least. Both Nora and Charlie talk about how reading a good book just feeds your soul. It does something good, you know? So just really appreciated those little tidbits and those little nods, because that's really how it is for avid readers and bookworms. We have so many different books that we have connected with throughout the months and years. You just think back to certain books and certain stories and you're like, wow, I really love that. The characters are compelling, the plot was compelling, because it's the truth and it's real. And then the last thing that I will say that I really enjoyed about the story was the sisterhood and the familial relationship between Nora and her sister Libby. I just loved their relationship so much. You could tell that Nora really cared about Libby and just wanted the best for her and wanted her to be happy and taken care of, because that's just how she was brought up. Because Nora and Libby lost their mother at a young age, Nora of course had to step up and really make sure that she took care of herself and Libby, and that still resonates with her all throughout adulthood, which causes some pain points between her and Libby. But for the most part, they got along so well, and you could just tell that they were like the best of friends. And I just think that sisterhood relationships that are like that are just so wholesome and so sweet. So all in all, I love this story so much, to the point where I will be rereading it at some point, because like I said, I have to go back and annotate it because there were just so many great quotes and great pieces of like life advice that I just loved. Don't let the reviews cloud your judgment like it did mine, because I was supposed to read this book months ago and I just fell off because so many people were giving this negative reviews. I just didn't know if I was going to fall into that category, especially because I did not like people we meet on vacation, but just like go into books with an open mind and just give them a read, because who knows, you might stumble upon a gem that you didn't think was going to be a gem. And that's exactly what this book was for me. All right, y'all, and those are all of the books that I read for the month of September. And as you can tell by this pile over here and by my glowing reviews, I had a great reading month and I'm really happy about that. I'm also happy at the fact that I was able to reach 6 books, because that has not happened in a few months. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen in October or for the rest of the year, but at least I was able to accomplish that in September. So hey, that's still a win in my book. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. And please make sure you check out my Pango Books shop, because I actually just created my own Pango Books account and I do have a few listings on there. It's nothing crazy, but I do have a few listings. So if you are interested in any of those books, just definitely make sure you check it out. The link is in my description box. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you in my next one. Bye.